Okay, good evening. It's 7:02. I'm going to call the meeting to order, PTA Council on May 17th. First thing I'd like to do is I sent the minutes out for everybody to look from last month. And I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Can I have a second? Juliet is going to second that. Okay. Without any objection, I'd like to pass the minutes by unanimous consent. Any objection? Okay, the minutes are passed by unanimous consent. Okay, Mike, why don't you go ahead then and give us your report.
Okay. I'm going to see if that works. I just took myself off speaker, so I try to avoid some feedback. I apologize, everybody. I'm not there on the screen. My boys have a game tonight, so I'm just calling from the car. So it gets a little noisy if it's traffic. I'm sorry about that. So I do have a couple things to talk about. One is I'll start out with the budget reductions. The board reviewed at the May 11th, meeting some proposals from the administration on cuts. And reductions to the $2 million reduction from the RTM. Based on feedback from the board, we're coming back on the 25th. We initially gave them two proposals. We're adding a third. The major difference between each of the proposals is the amount of students we would take through the open choice program. That's essentially the difference. There's a number of proposed cuts in all three. There's other proposed cuts in all three of the proposals. There is a reduction of 3.0 FTE at the high school. We worked with Mr. Kavanagh and Mr. Hatzis to make those reductions. I had reviewed the class enrollment grids, and we identified several places where changing staffing was not going to have a significant impact on classes. I explained at the board meeting that when you're looking at this, you often look at course sections of English, math, social studies, science, those types of courses. And when you can reduce a section here and there, your class size might go from 18 or 19 to 20, 21, because there's so many sections at those levels in freshman, sophomore, junior years, So they made those cuts, and we also then, and there's a detailed list. I don't have it with me, but we'll be sending back to the board, I'm hoping tomorrow, and that will be also put on the website for everybody to take a look at. And then the other staffing reduction was the central office secretary of 1.0, one full-time secretary at central office. The rest of the cuts were things that came out of the health insurance. There was cuts in the long-term disability. These are all things that when we initially proposed the budget, or worked on the budget really in December, proposed in January, we've received additional rates on those things. So fortunately, they broke in our favor this year, and those cuts will come from those things. So that's kind of where we are with the budget. I don't know, before I go any further, if there's any questions on it.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Anything else, Mike, you want to add?
Yep. The other thing, a couple of things I want to talk about. One was, I know the parents are going to be on later to talk about the work that's going on in the high school to address, in the district to address the anti-racism and the equity work. But I did want to let people know that members of our administration, there's a Board of Education representative, members of the anti-racism committee of the teachers union, and the Fairfield Equity Coalition, which is the alumni group of students, have formed a steering committee to try to guide the work of the district going forward. There's an awful lot of good efforts going on right now, and in an effort to kind of not duplicate, but to better coordinate the work across all those levels, there is a steering committee that's been formed. We've been meeting since about March. We're starting to identify the goal work around certain areas like curriculum, professional learning. Professional learning is really the top goal that we have. We want to put some things in place to start the school year. As I said, curriculum, hiring practices, and then we also want to start taking a look at our disciplinary structures. that's going to have an impact, I think, eventually on our policies as well. So the steering committee work is really to coordinate the work. They're not going to necessarily do the work themselves, but for example, doing the disciplinary work, Dr. Parrish is on the steering committee, as that's one of her responsibilities in the organization. She'll focus us on that. There's Dr. Zavajancic, who's not on the steering committee, would be doing the work around professional learning, because that's essentially what one of his roles is, to work with our professional learning committee. So those are all things that the steering committee will help coordinate with, the teachers union and the alumni group. And we eventually want to include our student groups in that, as well as build better connections with some of the groups that are going on in town. So I don't know if there's any questions on that I can address.
Does anybody have any questions on that, Jen or Jen? No, good. Okay, great. No, I don't see any questions, Mike. Anything else?
Yeah, just one more. Well, I just wanted to mention that obviously we're very concerned about the incident that happened at Ward and the subsequent issue that happened at Ludlow. We did meet today, this afternoon, with the parent of the students that were impacted by that, as well as members of the Bridgeport NAACP, the head principals, myself, Ms. DC, and members of our Fairfield Police Department. I think we had a very good meeting, a very constructive meeting. Clearly, what happened is absolutely unacceptable. We have a lot of work to do in the district, as you all know. I think even with that work, these types of things are going to continue to happen, and it's the nature of our society. Our number one goal is always going to be to protect our students and have a safe environment for them. But we have a lot of work to do on those things I already mentioned involved with the steering committee, beginning with the professional learning and making sure that our students feel that there is while these things may still happen, they have allies throughout the school system, in the school, and that we're going to shut it down. And as part of our core work is they continue to educate people to what's the better way to go. So I can talk more about that later in the meeting if people want. But last thing I want to talk about masks. I've received a number of emails over the past week. I don't think I'm speaking only for myself, saying that there seems to be some general confusion around the changes in the mask guidance from the CDC. We are, I think, as you know, I don't have. The superintendents have a weekly phone call with the Department of Public Health officials and the State Department of Ed on Tuesday mornings at 8. We're hoping for some more guidance around exactly what the state is proposing. The governor tends to talk about adults and social situations, and schools are often left kind of out of that conversation. We're hoping for more clarity on that tomorrow, and when we get that, we'll certainly communicate it out to everybody. I know that there's a lot of concern, especially with the warmer temperatures expected this week, the outside recess. But again, we've not got a clear understanding of what the state expects us to do to keep kids safe and healthy, and we're hoping that will come tomorrow. So again, once we have information, we'll get that right back out to everybody. And if we need to change our practices and guidelines, and we'll do that as well, so as we've done all year. So that's what I had, Steve.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. Okay, Anna, you've got a couple more minutes. You can hang on with us after and wait for Trish.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So as past president, I am tasked with presenting the following nominees to serve as officers for the Fairfield PTA Council for the school year 2021-2022. President Stephen Baker, who will provide much needed continuity. President-elect Katie Flynn. Past President Anna Wood, Treasurer Jane Corbett, Recording Secretary Amy Calandrello, and we will have 4 VPs at large this year. For next year. Caitlin Clarkson Pereira. Second VP at large is Mary Hogue. Third VP at large is Emily Lusk, and our 4th VP at large is an open slot at this point in time. So the presenter slate will be voted on at the general meeting, which will be our final meeting on June 14th. If there are any nominations from the floor, that must be submitted to the President, Steve Baker, at president@fairfieldptac.org by May 31st, the end of this month, 2021. Any additional nominations will be presented to the council via email by June 4th for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Any
Thank you.
questions on that? Okay, we will, like Anna said, we will vote on that at next meeting, which will be June 14th. And if you have you know anybody, or if you want to serve as well, please let me know within the next couple of weeks. Okay, we'll move on to Trish. I'm sorry. We skipped over you there. Go ahead, Trish.
That's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm glad Mr. Cummings was able to make it. And Katie, thank you for putting into the chat the link. If anyone wants to look, if you missed the last Board of Ed meeting, the proposal, like he said, he gave us 2 different scenarios, and he's adding a third based on the conversations that were had at the meeting. I believe a motion is coming from Jen Max and Kennelly to add the Math Academy back for 1 year. I know Nick Asa proposed a different scenario, and it basically comes down to getting to the $2 million. The one thing that we all differ on is the number of open choice students. So just to give you a little background information, open choice students were added into our racial imbalance plan. I believe it was a different board. I don't believe some of the members, I know Bonnie wasn't on it, but or Carol. We voted on and agreed on a racial imbalance plan. It took us quite a few meetings to create it. And in that plan, we agreed to have 100 open choice students. These are students who come from Bridgeport Public Schools, CES, which is Cooperative Education Services located in Trumbull. They're kind of like our overseers for Fairfield, this part of Fairfield County. And they run a lottery for the students of Bridgeport to be one of the 100 students that attends Fairfield Public Schools. The state pays currently $3,000 per student in tuition. They do get busing, I believe is paid for by Bridgeport Public Schools. And if the students require any services like physical therapy or speech language pathologist or occupational therapy or social skills or school psych, after the $3,000 tuition, then we bill Bridgeport Public Schools for those funds. Where we're differing is currently we have, I believe, 71 students out of the 100 that we'd originally agreed on. One of those students will not be in Fairfield Public Schools next year. I don't know if they're leaving or if they've graduated. But in a previous meeting, not this year, but before this, we had agreed under Tony Jones to bring in a total of 85. And so there was still more room in the 100 students that we'd agreed to on the racial imbalance plan. The thing is, we're going back in front of the state Board of Ed about an update on our racial imbalance plan. So Mike Cummings and some Board of Ed members in good faith would like to increase past the 100. And this is something that I believe we should vote on. We haven't discussed it past that. And then we brought in information that if we increase the numbers to 50% more, that we could get a one-time fee in tuition of $6,000 per open choice student. And so one, this was a way to look at revenue for our $2 million cut. And 2, many Board of Ed members want to bring in more open choice students. I will be honest with you. If you've watched the Board of Ed meetings, I am probably the only, if not one of the Board of Ed members that does not feel that we should be doing this right now, strictly because we've cut the Math Academy, cut the Remote Learning Academy, we cut part of art, and now we had to make up for the $2 million that was cut. I just felt that now was the time to focus on our students and their learning loss and their social emotional learning. Many of the board members are looking at each of the 3 different scenarios, and everyone is all over the place. I don't know what's going to happen at our next meeting. I don't know if we're going to add 30 more students, if we're going to do like Mr. Aces said and add 15 one year and 15 the next year to bring us to 100. And the second of the three scenarios is to add more students past the 100 and to bring in that $6,000 per student. So as board members, we have a lot to think about. There's a lot that goes into this, and it also offsets our insurance costs, which I'm still not 100% clear about. If you watched the meeting, we were asking Doreen Munsell to clarify the insurance for us. I did also bring up that before we start adding more students into our school district, you know, before the pandemic, we were talking about our facilities. We were going to do a facilities plan. We were going to talk about redistricting, not my favorite topic in the whole world. I really didn't want to bring it up, but I just wanted clarity on, okay, if we put extra students, say at Burr or Stratfield, and now we redistrict, do those kids move too, or did they get to stay in the school? And so wouldn't that be unfair to some kids who have to move out of their home school? There was just so many questions I had. And I started off by saying, this is a conversation we should be having in November, because that's when we craft our budget. And so there's a lot in the Board of Ed meeting. There was a lot of discussion. And we have a lot of thinking to do before our next meeting. And so I just want to know if anybody has any questions about that. Well, listen, I'm not offended. If you don't agree with me, it's okay. I'm used to it with the Board of Ed.
Oh,
So
so
I'm
sorry. Can you clarify? So for each student who is in the open choice program, the state or this organization, is it the state?
The state.
They pay the Stratfield or the Fairfield.
They pay us $3,000 per open choice student in tuition.
Okay. And so if we increase the number, it would be 6,000. That
just for next year.
Just for next year.
If we increase by 50%,
50%
for 1 year, they would give us 6,000 per student.
Okay.
And by the way, in our meeting, there was some confusion on, many members believe that there was also money given on the town side. We came to find out that wasn't really a lot anyway. There were some other thoughts to some other stuff. It was very informative meeting, you know, for people who had been voting on putting open choice students into the school district. We really didn't know a whole lot about what we were getting. And I know this is probably not a popular thought, but our per pupil expenditure is almost $20,000. So my argument once again was, well, we should be asking for more money in tuition, whether it's through the state or it's through CES, but there's so much behind. It's really not a short conversation. So the ultimate thing is, come May 25th, which scenario are we going to pick? How many students are we going to add for next school year?
Trish, can I ask you, I know other towns engage in similar programs with
Yes. Yep.
communities like Stanford. Do we have like a comparison of,
Yes.
I think in some communities reimbursement is higher.
Yes.
Is there any way to?
Not in Fairfield County.
Not in Fairfield County, okay.
No, actually.
So it's only outside of Fairfield County?
Yes. So that was part of my confusion in asking them, hey, before we do this, can we see what else is going on? So as the Board of Ed liaison for CES, I reached out to them to get some data. And in Fairfield County, we're one of the districts that takes the most open choice students. Thank you, Christine. So Christine said reimbursement is dictated by state statute. What I was confused about, I had gone and done something called a NEASC visit. For any of you guys have high school students up in Boland School District, and they're part of Hartford, and they were receiving the $3,000 per student, but they were also receiving $22,000 per student from Hartford. And Christine and Mike looked it up, and that's part of a whole nother program. which came out of a lawsuit. I had always assumed, based on what I had read, that open choice students were a way to help diversify the district and give Bridgeport students an opportunity to come into not just Fairfield, but Trumbull and Easton. So Easton, by the way, only has 4 open choice students. Like, I got all the data, and I get that now the state is trying to get the other districts to take on more students. So there was part of my confusion in the first meeting of talking about this is there was a program to give the school districts surrounding Norwalk more money per tuition for, right. But the way CES presented it to me, they didn't tell me it was for Norwalk. They sent out an email, and I was very confused. I thought it was for us. I thought it was for like all of Fairfield County, and Fairfield had been left out of this. And when I emailed him at CES, I think he was confused what I was asking too. I was like, why are we the only district not being offered more money? And he said, well, you don't fit into that state statute. So, but once again, like, this is stuff we should have known a while ago. I feel like there was so much confusion the last couple of meetings on information that we needed on this to make a good decision. We're affecting students' lives. I mean, I want to know what's at stake here. And if I need to advocate to the state, to bring in more children, yes, it's not about finances, right? It's about the education a child receives. But at the end of the day, I do have to sell this to other town bodies. It's the part of my position I don't like, but it is an important thing that I have to do. So I need to be very informed when I do it. Does anybody have any other questions about open choice?
Can I ask one question? You
Sure.
started the conversation mentioning that saying that Fairfield would bring in 100 students was part of a plan, the balancing
The racial imbalance
equality
plan. Yeah.
So what impact does not meeting that number have as they come in and audit?
It's a great question.
I
There is a lot
want.
in that plan, not just about the open
Tricia?
choice. Yeah.
Mike said he would like to comment on that if you.
Oh yeah, I didn't know you're still on, Mike. Great.
Yep, I'm here. Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, essentially, the plan had several components. The plan goes back to Dr. Title, and I think that as Tricia said, we've been working with the state for quite some time on this. I've been working in my 6 years in Fairfield on it, and it predates me probably by about 4 years. Part of the plan is to increase open choice enrollment. Part of it was to, with the pre-K program, when it was at Burr and Dwight, McKinley students were offered the opportunity to go there. Their siblings could grandfather themselves in as well. There would be transportation provided to them. There was also an opportunity that students at other schools in Fairfield could ask and request access to attend McKinley, and they would get transportation. So it was really to try to balance these major 3 components. We tried to balance the racial numbers across the school system. None of these have worked. I mean, none of them have been adequate by themselves or together to meet the state requirement of racially balancing McKinley School. So we were last at the State Department in October of 2019. Ms. Vitale, Mr. Asa, and myself, we gave an update to the state. The tone was different than the times I've been there before. They were more understanding, I think, of kind of what we were doing and what we were attempting to do. But I will also tell you that the state, and this is the State Department of Education, their patience has run out. They were patient with us because they had a new board chair, there was a new superintendent, but it was also clear, don't come back here and tell this the same story again in a couple of years. So we didn't go back this year, because of the pandemic. I would expect we're going to get called up again September or October of 2021. And we're going to provide an update. At this point, that is essentially the plan. The state's expectation will be then, because the plan has not been successful in balancing the district, that the district would then adapt a redistricting plan. And I think that people probably remember that the board was beginning serious discussions on that in February of 2020. We had a report from Malone and McBroom, the enrollment consultants, around possible redistricting plans. And again, the February of 2020, and we all know what happened within about 3 weeks of that. So that has all been suspended in the meantime. So as Tricia said, that the next step the board wants to do is to re-engage in that work. Well, they may not want to do it, but it's all work that we know we need to re-engage in to go forward and start to address some of these issues in town. And I think to some degree, what we're seeing, in terms of behaviors and things, speaks to the need to find some way to promote greater diversity throughout the school system. It certainly is showing itself as an issue for our students and our families. So that's kind of the background on the racial imbalance plan.
Thank you. I'm so glad you were here. I just want to add one more thing. The plan is a timeline of what we proposed we would do. And so when we go back in front of them, whenever it is, we haven't done it. To
Katie,
answer
do
your
you have a
question,
question?
what will happen if we don't? We can speculate on that, but we haven't gotten ourselves in front of them yet. And some people say, well, what can they do to us? And then other people have a theory that, they can hold state funds. There's some people in town that just want to sue the state. It's all over the place.
Trisha, can I ask a quick question? This
Yes.
is kind of a chicken or the egg question. So if we were to take these higher number or any number of open choice students, was any even speculated number included in those redistricting plans from last year?
Christine, I don't remember us including that. Do you? Christine Vitale's here, but
Yeah, I know. I'm just
I
curious.
don't think we were talking about open choice students when we were talking about redistricting. I think the biggest concern, no, I think the bigger concern is there's all these new developments in town. And so we didn't want to redistrict, knowing that in a year or two later, we all of a sudden would have all these kids like at McKinley, at Holland Hill, or do you know what I mean? Like down near the beach. And I just don't think there's ever going to be a good time to redistrict. I think it was pushed because of the racial imbalance plan. It was pushed because of overcrowding at some of the schools. But we have to start talking about it again, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's all these little moving pieces that everyone just is aware. Christine, I see your hand.
Go ahead, Christine. You still have to unmute, Christine.
When Malone and McBroom did the plans, the current open choice students were counted in those figures. So whatever it was, around 80, I think it was probably around 85 at that point. We don't differentiate out. Those are, once they come into the system, those are for Fairfield Public School students. So they're part of the system. Per the racial imbalance plan, I included the link in the chat. We were supposed to be at 100 open choice students by the 2018-2019 school year. That didn't happen. I think the expectation when we go back up to the state is that at the very least, we made a good faith effort to meet that portion of the plan. In terms of the redistricting, the superintendent and staff looked at open spaces in elementary schools. The key to keeping any costs with open choice students down is that you don't want to force a section. So it would be strategic that if you were placing students in a school, you would place them in a section where there was enough headroom that the addition of more students wouldn't require us to hire another teacher. In terms of, redistricting, thankfully we have, a decent amount of headroom in all of our elementary schools right now. So I'm not really sure that taking, 30 open choice students over a district of 17 schools would really, make or break a redistricting plan. A lot of that is going to be based on, neighborhood. But that's where we are right now. And really the we end up taking will be tied to the budget vote or budget adjustment vote, which is being taken on May 25th. So I'll take any quick, Mike and Tricia covered most of it, but if anybody else has any questions, happy to add further detail on that.
I'll do just one. So there, our open choice students are over all three levels.
All 3 levels.
Thank you. That's just a good clarifier for everyone.
Yep.
I just want to add one thing just to be very clear. Open choice students from Bridgeport through CES, there is no criteria. It's a lottery. So anyone in Bridgeport Public Schools can apply for that. And I think it's based on where we're going to place them. Like if it's a 2nd grade class, or do you know what I mean? That's really the only criteria. We'd be discriminating if we gave any other criteria for the lottery system.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for Tricia? Okay, great. Seeing as we have a quorum now, I'd like to present the budget for a vote before we lose anybody and before we turn time over to the Equity Committee. Jane, are you prepared to take that, put that budget up? It should be.
Yes, so there was a budget, let's see if this is it, that we had shared. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So there was a budget that we had presented, and if you see this column G, that was the one that was sent out. That was the one that's in the meeting minutes. Since that point, we're proposing one additional change, but I'll just kind of walk through.
1 second, let me make a motion to accept the budget. Can I have a second? Okay, Katie seconds it. Okay, let's discuss that. Maybe, okay, you can go ahead. Go ahead, Jane.
Okay, so just looking at the income line, the biggest change that we had presented before was that we would not be having the photography money, which we've all kind of been through all of those discussions. The transfer from savings line, it's line 10, if you guys can read it. That number is a calculated field. It just changes based on what we approve for expenses. So the one that was presented, that was sent out, that we just voted on, was $642. The amended one is $6,542, and I explained the changes. One other piece to call out about the income, it's not a change from what was presented or what we had talked about. It's just a call out that based on the new structure of PTA Council, we need to discuss FAE. PTA Council would always collect the money for FAE, kind of organizing the performers, kind of fell under the PTA umbrella, even though it was a separate entity. So now this budget just reflects the fact that it's completely separate from PTA Council, and we just need to, at some point, figure out what we're going to do with it. But that's the only call out from the income section. If we jump down to the grant section, obviously the largest call out is there is no grant money. But what we are proposing that we keep in the budget and is the high school scholarship fund, which is $5,000, and also the SEPTA grant money, at least for this moment, which is $900. Both of those are kind of traditions, it's committed, and especially when we talk about SEPTA, it's challenging. They have a smaller group to pull from for their programming, and so we decided that we would propose to the group that we would keep that $900 in. So once again, keep the $5,000 in for the high school scholarship fund and the $900 in for the grant fund for SEPTA grant.
Then I would like to, the high school scholarship fund was initially in the budget that we proposed last month, correct?
Well, unfortunately, when I sent it out, it wasn't in there, so I apologize for that, but we've always talked about keeping it there.
Yes, right, we did. We did propose that we would, out of our savings, keep in any obligations that we had in the past like that. So I'd like to make an amendment at this point then. to change the proposed budget and amend it for the, oh, let's see, I really need my glasses for this one. Where we're adding, how much for $900 for SEPTA, and
And
we're adding
$5,000.
$5,000 for the HSSFF. Okay, can somebody second that for me? Katie? Okay. Do we have any questions or discussion on that? Okay, then all those in favor of that amendment, adding those two in, please raise your hand. Any objection? Okay, seeing no objection, we'll pass that with unanimous consent. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to the budget. Jane, go ahead.
Right. So just going down, one call out from the administrative cost is the G Suite line, which I had talked about at the last meeting. We went through and eliminated any emails that we had set up under the PTA council organization for schools that hadn't been used, and any shared drive information, and nothing that the emails obviously went away. Anything on the shared drive for a particular school, I saved. So if anybody's looking for it, I have it, but nobody had been using it for about 2 years. So that's how that budget line changed. I just thought I should call that out. The rest of the administrative costs are just, typical cuts of, leadership development, office expenses. We don't really use anything. Printing, we don't print anymore. So yeah, so this is kind of it. So for those of you who hate numbers, this is a balanced budget. It's very obviously conservative. We're not having the photography money. We're not spending a lot. And we have a nice cushion in the bank account, which is a discussion for another day as to what we're going to do with the dollars that are sitting in the bank account. So once again, for those of you who hate numbers, like I always say at the beginning of my treasurer update, we have money, we're all good. And a budget is just a plan, and you can always make a change. This isn't like the Board of Ed. We can come up with something and we need to make a change or an adjustment. We can do it in a meeting with a vote. So.
Thanks, Jane. Does anybody have any questions? We went through this quite extensively at the last meeting, but if anybody has thought it over and has any questions on the way we're moving forward, gladly consider those. Katie and I and all the board, we've been discussing this basically all year because the way we operated before was not sustainable. And we really hope that this will bring us closer to what PTA councils are in more of a connection, collaboration type of effort where we all get together and share our ideas on how we support each other's goals. And we plan on having a good discussion at a retreat, sort of like the old retreats we used to have at the beginning of the year at PTA Council, except it'll just be a round table of all of us and a big whiteboard, and we're going to discuss committees and board members and all of that as well. So then, seeing no other questions, I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor of accepting the amended budget, say aye. Any opposing? Seeing no opposing, the budget is accepted. Thank you very much. We really have put a lot of work into it, but there's a lot more work that we're going to be doing together, and hope to have all of your input as well. Okay, thank you, Jane, very much. I've been making Jane very confused these past few weeks, but it's a new paradigm that we're going to be going through, so it's hard to get out of those old habits, but I think we're going to really benefit from that. Okay, so let's, I'm going to move on for the Equity Committee, if that's okay. They've got a, you know, of course, of what's been going on in the schools this week. I asked them to take as much time as they needed tonight to discuss on the Equity Project. So we have Jen, and Jen, you go first.
Hi, everyone. For any of you that have heard my reports before, you know that I typically talk about what the equity groups are doing at the schools, and that is going to continue, but we are going to expand the role of this a little bit, and we are going to really be using the national PTA guidelines to do that. So I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about some things that we found out on the National PTA website, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jennifer Elwood, who will be the new Fairfield Equity Project chairperson come June. So basically, if you go onto the National PTA website, they have an entire section on DEI, and what they talk about is that PTA at every level must openly assess beliefs and practices to assure inclusiveness and guard against discrimination. Make every effort to create a PTA board and membership that is inclusive and reflective of its community. Encourage that all PTA activities at the school be planned by a committee which is representative of the population. Foster programs and practices that eliminate bias, prejudice, and misunderstanding within their communities. Become acquainted with the leaders of many diverse groups in the community and collaborate with them to increase parent, family, and community involvement. And just so you know, Jennifer and I, along with the members of this committee, have been in close touch with all of the equity groups that are doing fantastic work in our town. And so we are going to, well, more to come about that, but just know that we are not operating in our own little bubble here. We are very much involved with the other groups, which is part of the National PTA guidelines as well. And to educate its leaders and members to the needs, cultural beliefs, traditions, and family structures of the population they serve, and propose change wherever discriminatory practices are perceived. So we are really going to be using these guidelines to plan and implement the work that the committee is going to be doing. And so I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer to talk a little bit more about some of this work.
Thank you, Jen. And thanks so much, Steve, for giving us time to talk about all of this tonight, especially with what is happening in our town currently. So I wrote it all down because there's a lot to say, and I want to be sure that I'm really expressing all the important parts. So first, I'd like to introduce our committee members. They are on the call tonight. We have Carrie Langerman, Jen Jenkins, Suzanne Parker, and Rainey Knorr. We are parents of pre-K through high school students, and we live in a variety of neighborhoods throughout Fairfield. We are hardworking, kind, open-minded, collaborative, and ready and willing to do the work ahead of us. We represent many different life experiences and backgrounds, and we are really experiencing and feeling that power in our collaboration. We have so many perspectives, and it's given us connections to a lot of different areas in town. So as the PTA Equity Project, we are following the charge laid out by the National PTA, as Jen said, and this particular quote really speaks to what I'm talking about tonight. So their charge is to listen, educate, and advocate to demand meaningful change to end institutional racism. So for us, this means amplifying student voice and initiatives, working with school PTAs to support their inclusion efforts, and supporting a new alliance of all equity-related groups across our community. And really importantly, it means also providing a pathway for parents in our district to engage and support in this work as well. We really recognize that every single one of us is in a different point on this journey. And we are mindful of truly being able to connect with each person at that specific point. Some of us are brand new. Some of us have been engaging in this work for a long time. And we are very mindful of that. We have already had the opportunity to support our student community in the anti-Asian hate rally, which included US and state senator speakers. We are working locally on a library inclusion program, and we were able to support the Fairfield Equity and Justice Task Force in the wake of their Zoom bomb attack with connecting them to resources in order to help them process the emotional experience, the emotional side of what happened there. So we will have many more concrete actions to share with you guys as we move forward. However, in light of the past few weeks, we've really changed gears and become fully focused in support mode. So as you're all aware, there have been several overt racist attacks in our town over the last weeks, and the most recent ones are involving children. This is something that has impacted our entire community as a whole. It's not just the family of the boys that this happened to, but the Black community and families of color as well. This is a community-wide trauma that has occurred. And we have many families who are hurting and needing support. Our committee has been working really hard to organize and connect students, educators, and parents who are out there wanting to help, but might not yet know how. We've been doing a lot of listening and will continue to do so as action steps forward are created by this committee and our community. We are so thankful to have the guidance of the National PTA as we move through this work. It's really helped to clarify kind of how we can engage and how we can best use our resources. So I wanted to share a few actions that we're collaborating on with student-led groups coming out of this particular event. So one is a request to the Board of Ed and the district to co-create a detailed protocol for how to respond in racist and discriminatory attack moments, but also how to do proactive work to change the culture and conversation across the district as they're happening. A request for implementation of an effective restorative justice program across the district, specifically to serve as a vehicle to repair, to build understanding and communication, and to provide shared lived experience when instances like this occur, because as Mike said earlier, they will continue to occur. Also a family-friendly rally in town for inclusivity, which would be an event for people to really just come together, to listen, to learn, and to build connections with other people and resources in town. So really, the last piece of this puzzle for us is hearing from all of you on what type of support you need from us. Our number one priority is always our students, and in order to support them, we also need to support and engage parents, educators, and the district at large. There is a lot of work to be done and many different perspectives that will be represented. We will absolutely encounter some tricky topics, serious situations, difficult conversations, but ultimately we know that we're going to grow stronger as a community as we overcome them together. So we are putting a link in the chat for any parent or person here who's interested in learning more about this work or getting involved in different ways. But also we just would love to hear from you guys at this point.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let's see here. Does anybody have any questions for Jennifer? Katie.
I'll go first. Thank you guys so much. What a great presentation. I know digging into the National PTA gave me a lot of insight on advocacy and what a tool that is. So thank you for speaking to that. I know that you guys had spoken in a few different arenas about expanding this work to the elementary school level. And I think that that's such a vital part of this conversation, especially as 11 schools are represented, and a large part of our PTA work really begins there. Could you speak to that at all, or maybe fill us in so we can help you get on that work?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of ways currently that work is happening. One way is students at the middle school and high school level in equity groups are very engaged and energized around the idea of multiple different ways that they can make connections with elementary school. So they're thinking in the vein of education, community building, library events. They've got a variety of ways that hopefully this summer they'll begin to put some energy behind, and we can help them sort of frame out details. We're also beginning to meet with school administrators to hear about what needs are in those particular schools. My kids are at McKinley, so I'm meeting, Jen Jenkins and I are meeting with the principal there next week. And then Carrie Langerman has some specific initiatives underway. Carrie, do you want to speak to what you have on board?
Sure. Hi, my name is Carrie. I'm new to Fairfield. I have 2 boys, 3 years and 5 years. So my 5-year-old will be entering Burr in the fall of 2021, and we're really excited. It's our first time with, a school and a community. And we moved here from New York City, and the first thing I wanted to do was make sure I got connected to the community so that I could make some really great friends for my kids and all that stuff. So once I found Jennifer Weinstein and we talked about, sort of what we could do for the elementary schools, for me, the whole approach, we just sort of all talked about it, the women that, we've been working with. And it really is just about finding really fun, bright, warm, loving ways to introduce different type of protagonists to our children, and making sure that we're putting images in front of them that really highlight all that we have in common, really, which is, the desire to love and learn and giggle and, all these things that that we all share. And we start that way, and we want to just sort of nurture that and really remind our children that there is a lot, the world is so big and it's so great, and we want to have all of these perspectives in the classroom. And aside from that stuff, as a parent, I also am in close contact still with a lot of PTA mothers from other districts. I made sure this is my first time in a PTA, so I did a lot of homework, and I called my friend she's in a PTA in Westchester, my other friend who's in a PTA in Brooklyn, and I was just kind of like, what do you guys do? Like, what does your school do about diversity, equity? Like, what is even happening right now? And they all just gave me a lot of great advice about, starting young and making sure that all of the elementary curriculum is just really centered around the spirit of joy and inclusivity, and just really looking after each other and building those relationships. And so that's kind of, a way in is we want to do a book initiative, and again, make it fun for families. And it can be fun to think about even what parents' favorite books were, and you can have like a hashtag, or, it depends on what we want to do. But in general, just finding ways to make this fun for the community. It will be a lot of hard work and all those times, but there should also be a lot of joy along the way, just from learning from each other. And I think it's, the books were a really big part of that idea for the children.
Thank you so much. I have elementary schoolers as well. My oldest is in 3rd, and I have 2 kindergartners. So I said to Jen at one point, I was like, what an amazing, to bringing it down to the elementary level. So I'd love to touch base with all you guys, any help you need to help facilitate that. I know Steve is on board. We're all on board, whatever you all need.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Well, Jennifer, thank you very much. And Jen, thanks for all the work you've done in the past. I see you have really placed us in great hands. Thank you. Okay, yes, thanks. Let's see, I've been skipping around the agenda, I apologize. Let's see, Katie and Caitlin, did you have anything to report tonight?
My budget, I feel like in budget season, I kind of get, Mike gives the update and Trish, but same thing, the budget adjustments were presented last Tuesday. In the chat is the BOE backup document. I'm also gonna throw in there the Finance Committee backup document minutes. That gives kind of some insight into how the district as a whole is looking at moving forward. Obviously, redistricting is in those conversations. Budget adjustments, these are all kind of realities as we come out of the pandemic back into, as Mike said, 3 weeks before we were sitting in a meeting talking about redistricting. So as much of it's not a surprise, it's all a part of moving forward in the district. And then just a quick update and thank you from the RLA committee. With the support of our 11 elementary schools and 3 middle schools, that committee was able to give our RLA staff a teacher appreciation week, which included a t-shirt and some other things. And really what I was saying to the people I've met through working on that committee, what a gift it's been to see, you know, all pieces of this year for everyone, and really the support of the PTAs from the RLA to SEPTA and PTAC moving forward. You know, we're charged with representing all of the students of this district, and that, you know, has been a little tricky this year because our students went different places. So I think it's been a learning experience that will help us moving forward. So I just wanted to highlight that support and really thank all our PTAs.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, any questions for Katie or Caitlin? Caitlin, do you have anything you want to add?
I just want to echo Teacher Appreciation Week. Obviously, this year has been incredibly hard for our teachers, and it was so uplifting to see all the pictures on social media. And my daughter came home buzzing from school talking about all the fun things that were happening. So for the members of the PTA who are responsible for that, thank you again, because there's lots of parents who would love to put together all those fun crafts and breakfasts and lunches, and you know, we just, life didn't let us. And so thank you for giving our teachers the opportunity to feel appreciated. There was a meeting that was going around a couple weeks ago that's like, if you Appreciation Week, you probably don't get paid enough. And we certainly know that's true, but you know, the best that we can do to let them know how much we love them and are grateful for the work that they do is really important. And certainly wonderful to see some new faces here as part of the Fairfield Equity Alliance. And like Katie said, we're here to help you out with whatever you need. So feel free to reach out, and we're gonna make some really wonderful change together. I'm really excited.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. Okay, if nobody else has any other questions for them, I'm going to go to Riney for Fairfield Cares this time.
Hi there. Yes, now it's Fairfield Cares. So last week was National Prevention Week. This is all nestled within Mental Health Awareness Month. If you have come by the town green, you will have seen the Tree of Hope lit up in Mental Health Green. And the Fairfield Cares Youth Committee organized a Calm for the Community Wellness Fair last week, and it was just spectacular and wonderful. If you go on our social media, you see my mad video skills and impromptu interviewing of the guys who brought the Change the Script van. So that was really a really wonderful event. And we're thankful to the town for giving us that opportunity. And this Wednesday, we'll have a stand-up comedian slash psychologist do a virtual comedy show for us. And it's, I'm gonna catch that link to get you guys so you can register. It's gonna be fun. And it's basically all about, in a humorous way, to make our lives a bit more stress-free, and also that of our kids and teens, and to you know, to get out of this pandemic with our humor somewhat intact, because God knows we need some humor in our lives right now. So Matt Dallas is the presenter. He's been a stand-up comedian and psychologist for quite a while. I just don't want to be in his brain. That must be going all kinds of crazy. But I've listened to some others of his presentations, and they're really great. And then, you know, there's a lot of resources of tools to thrive. That's the theme of Mental Health Month. And there are a lot of resources on our website. And the library has a display in, at least in the Woods Library, with all kinds of mental health titles. We have a mental health title list on our website for those who are looking for some inspiration. And there is also next week, I believe, there is going to be laughing yoga at the beach with Shelley. I don't know too many details, but those will be forthcoming very, very shortly. That's going to be free at the beach, Enfield, if I'm not mistaken. And so everybody is welcome to attend that and catch our theme. We really want to use laughter as the best medicine this month. And then we have a movie. It's called If They Had Known. We have the screening rights all year long. And any entity who would like to show this movie, just send an email. We have another little item on our website that explains it in detail, and I will be very happy to arrange that screening. There is material to have a debriefing and discussion. This is more for the older crowd that has teenagers, and this is about the dangers of mixing prescription drugs or illegal drugs with alcohol. And this was made by a group of students or a group of young people whose friend died that way. And it's very heart-wrenching, but a very necessary discussion, especially for those of us like me with older children and who know friends who have lost children. And so that screening I can arrange anytime with anybody who would like that. And then we also have, for our elementary crowd, we have a brand new read aloud version of Gizmo's Possum Guide for Mental Health. Gizmo is the kind of 3-pound teacup doggy that is the mascot for DEMAS, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention actually had him go national. And so any PTA with elementary school kids would like to organize a Gizmo's Possum Guide of Mental Health read aloud, or just get the animated presentation that has it in it. They can do it at an after school activity or whatever they want to do, but just let me know and I'll be happy to get that to you. Then there is a brand new what's called a graphic medicine. So I thought I'm pretty in tune into the topic. I had no idea what a graphic medicine is. So a graphic medicine is kind of it's a graphic novel that is used to address a health concern. And the New England Technical Transfer Assistance Center that covers all the New England states, they just published a graphic novel that talks about vaping, and it kind of chronicles the lives of 5 teenagers throughout their high school career. We have another news item on our website that has all those details. And we have gotten 60 books in paper that have been given to the Lori Mediati and the health curriculum liaison, and she's going to divide them up amongst the schools, but every teacher can order their own class set if they wished. I think we can order up to 25 copies at a clip, and our website includes those instructions. And there's also an immediate download for PDF that people can just get right away. And our libraries have been given 3 copies as well, so they can have them at the libraries. So as you can see, we've been really, really busy. And I'd love for everybody to join us on Wednesday. And we also are very thankful to Fairfield Public Schools, because we just submitted our application for the Drug-Free Communities Grant. And if that is accepted, then we can sustain ourselves for another 5 years, and we can actually be housed within Fairfield Public Schools because they're the legal applicant. So everybody, put your good vibes in for that so we can continue our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rani. Let's see here. Okay, did I leave anybody else out that needed to share? Any questions? Okay, Christine.
Can I just make a plug? Everybody should have gotten the school climate survey email today from the superintendent. just, I know that in years past, being a past PTA president, that sometimes parents are not quick to fill it out. So anything that you could do just to help the district, to encourage parents to complete that, I found as a PTA president, it was very valuable. I mean, we used that survey to help inform planning for PTA programming. Hopefully next year, we'll be able to do a lot more programming in person. So any help you can do just to encourage your communities to fill it out, that would be great. So thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending. It was a very productive meeting. And thank you for the new faces that have came tonight. And I'm going to call the meeting, adjourn the meeting at 8:07. And if you have any questions regarding anything during the week, please just email me, and our next meeting will be June 14th. Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Not everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.